Bro, this is not just romance, this is an emotional time bomb. She thinks she's meeting a dangerously attractive stranger for the first time while the guy is literally her husband, forced to pretend they've never met because one brutal accident wiped him clean out of her head, and just when she starts falling for him again, boom, hidden wedding photos, secret lies, shady vitamins, terrified parents, and a truth so insane it sounds made up. But the real madness? Even after everything, her heart still runs back to him before her memory does. Watch this till the end, because every reveal hits harder than the last, and the final twist isn't whether she remembers him, it's whether she chooses him again.
Olivia drifted back to consciousness, piece by piece. Something was wrong. A deep, unsettling hum of wrongness vibrated through her as she scanned the familiar lines of her own apartment. Nothing was out of place. Her camera gear sat where it belonged. But a dread coiled in her stomach, hinting at a vast, empty space in her memory. It intensified at the mirror, a stranger's face, and an unknown bruise blooming on her forearm. She had no memory of the injury, so her mind scrambled for a story, settling on a clumsy accident. The lie was a fragile comfort, a thin sheet of ice over a deep, dark part of her that refused to believe it. Her phone rang, shattering the quiet. It was her mother, her voice stretched tight with a worry she tried to hide behind questions about Olivia's health. Olivia gave the usual reassurances, but her mother's replies were brittle, hollow things. Then her mother mentioned a prescription from a Dr. Reynolds, a name that meant nothing. A quick search uncovered a bottle. Post-viral immune support. Another piece of a life she didn't remember living. Still, she agreed, trusting the voice on the phone. Her mother kept talking, weaving a story about a virus, insisting the pills were for her recovery. Olivia tried to grasp the memory of being sick, but there was nothing. A chasm. Yet she nodded along, accepting the fiction. An unspoken dread settled over her after the call. Staring out at the familiar city lights, she felt like a ghost, completely disconnected from the world below. Her upcoming gallery exhibition was the only solid thing to cling to. Megan from the gallery called, her words carefully chosen to smooth over Olivia's time off, making the void feel normal. She looked at her own photographs, seeing their technical skill, but feeling no memory of the moment she'd captured them. At the gallery opening, she moved on autopilot, a phantom performing a well-rehearsed part. The empty hum of her memory was a constant backdrop. Then suddenly the noise of the room faded, her entire world narrowing to a single fixed point. Someone was watching her. It was a stare, unlike the casual glances of the crowd. Deliberate, intense. Her eyes found him instantly, a man, Giovanni, in a perfectly tailored suit. He felt her look, and his gaze locked onto hers. The moment their eyes met, the gallery fell away. The chatter, the people, all of it dissolved into a blur. There was only Giovanni, his face a tragic landscape of pain and hope that resonated deep within some forgotten part of her soul. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, trapped thing. He began to walk toward her, each step measured and purposeful. "Your work is remarkable," he said, his voice smooth. Olivia summoned a smile, a fragile mask of calm. "Haven't we met before?" he asked. "No," she answered too quickly, denying the phantom memory that flickered at the edge of her mind. A flicker of tension crossed his face before he smoothly changed the subject. Up close, a pale scar traced the line of his throat, and she couldn't look away. "I'm Giovanni," he said, extending his hand. The instant their skin touched, a jolt like pure electricity shot up her arm, and a gasp escaped her lips. He held on, his thumb pressing lightly against the frantic pulse in her wrist, his eyes searching hers with a raw desperation. "Just static," she mumbled. "Not weird," he corrected softly, his gaze unwavering. "Unexpected." He gave the moment weight. Giovanni. The name echoed in the empty chambers of her mind, familiar but lost. It made no sense. She was sure they had never met, yet the force of his gaze felt like a spotlight, pinning her in place and shutting out the world. He leaned closer, and the subtle scent of his cologne filled the space between them. "We should discuss your work somewhere quieter," he suggested, the professional excuse a thin veil. Every rational instinct screamed that this was a dangerous idea, but her rational mind was losing. She agreed, pulled in by a force she could not name. For a split second, pure, unguarded relief washed over Giovanni's face, a crack in his composure that he sealed just as quickly. He led her to a quiet cafe nearby, away from the gallery's crowd. His hand hovered at the small of her back, a gesture both guiding and claiming. Seated in a corner booth, he began by praising her photographs, keeping the pretense alive. His questions were specific, revealing a deep familiarity with her portfolio, a calculated effort to earn her trust. But the polite talk couldn't hide the electric tension humming beneath. Every time their hands brushed, the same startling jolt shot through her. When she asked what he did, his answer was a vague story about international trade. The deliberate emptiness of his words confirmed her suspicion. The business talk was a lie, a cover for the real reason he was here. "Who are you?" The words tumbled out of her, raw and impulsive. He met her question not with a truth, but with a poet's evasion about fate and connection. Before she could press him, her mother's name lit up her phone screen. "Family," he had murmured, as if he had known. On the phone, her mother's strained voice returned to the vitamins, her anxious questions confirming the call was a check-in, a maintenance dose of control over Olivia's fragmented mind. Her mother's questions were too precise. "Are you dizzy? Confused?" Like a doctor probing for symptoms. When Olivia called her out, the excuse was just a mother's worry, a gentle dismissal that made Olivia feel crazy. When she returned, he was ready to leave, orchestrating the end of their meeting. He handed her a card, placing the next move squarely in her court. "Sometimes you have to trust what you feel," he said, a deliberate challenge. And then he was gone. He walked away with the easy confidence of a man who owned the world. Her gaze fell to the card in her hand. Giovanni Moretti. The name was a key to a door she could not find, unlocking a sudden, profound ache of loss. For 3 days, his name echoed in her thoughts. Finally, reason gave way to a desperate need to know. She called. He answered on the first ring, and the way he said her name, Olivia, sent a shiver through her, a response that felt learned, programmed. She expected to talk about her photography. Instead, a heavy silence hung on the line. "Dinner," he finally said. "We can discuss the details." Every alarm in her head was screaming, but she heard herself agree. Yes. She agreed before she could think. The restaurant was exclusive, a place she had never noticed, radiating quiet money. The host was dismissive until Giovanni gave his name. Moretti. The man's demeanor changed instantly. "Mr. Moretti, your table is ready." He led her to a secluded corner booth, private yet commanding a view of the entire room. Wine appeared without being ordered, poured with reverence. "You come here often?" she asked. "For years," he replied, settling into the booth as if he owned it. "The owner is an old friend." The conversation flowed easily. He did not just ask about her work, he understood it, analyzing her process with an unnerving depth of knowledge. "You focus on cityscapes," he said, leaning in closer to her. "But so many of your photos are of storms, thunderclouds, rain. Why?" The answer was instinctual, a confession about her love for the way rain washes everything clean. As she spoke, his entire expression softened, flooded with an unmistakable, profound relief. It was like she had given him an answer he was desperate to hear. "What was that?" she demanded. That look on your face, like I said exactly what you needed me to. His jaw tightened. Perhaps you did. More riddles. I'm sorry, he said, his hand reaching across the table, hesitating just above hers. Some things are hard to explain. Before she could press him, appetizers arrived, the very things she would have chosen, right down to the missing olives. Lucky guess? She asked, her voice sharp. Observant, he replied, finally closing his hand over hers. The electric shock returned. This time the jolt was stronger. You're so easy to read, he murmured. She had always thought herself guarded, a closed book. But he saw through her with an intimacy born of watching her for a very, very long time. They talked for hours, circling the truth. He would switch to Italian sporadically, a language she didn't understand but felt in her bones. The words he offered in English were harmless, a stark contrast to the predatory focus in his eyes. Tell me of your family, he asked as dessert was served. They live in the suburbs. A sister, Lauren, older. A typical relationship, he stated it, not asked. You're close. Yes, but my mother, lately, she hesitated. She's become watchful, asking strange things about my well-being. Maybe she has a reason. A long silence stretched as he watched her. It's just a mother's worry, she offered, but his voice suggested a hidden truth. They left close to midnight, Giovanni adamant about seeing her home. The city was hushed, only their footfalls broke the silence. He maintained a precise space between them, close enough to feel like a shield, far enough to seem respectful. Will I see you again? He asked at her door, all business pretense gone. No. Her bluntness did not faze him. What do you want from me? To know you. His fingers lifted, ghosting along the line of her jaw with a slow, deliberate pressure. If you'll allow it. She never questioned his strange intimacy or the way people deferred to him. Instead, a slight nod was her only answer. He left without another touch, but the ghost of his hand lingered on her skin long after he was gone. The next morning, 24 white roses appeared, the delivery anonymous but the sender unmistakable. When she called him to say thank you, he answered at the first ring. An art gallery opens this evening. Join me, Olivia, please. That last word, a plea tinged with something like desperation, shattered her resolve. After that, the days began to blur. Giovanni's infiltration into her life was swift, always masked by impeccable manners. He would be there outside her office, after a meeting, or on her path home. A series of chance encounters that felt anything but random. She mentioned it to her mother on a routine call. There's a man, she started. A man! Her mother's voice jumped an octave. Tell me everything. Olivia described Giovanni's intensity, the unnerving way he watched her. His name, her mother pressed. Giovanni Moretti. A beat of silence. Oh, darling, that's wonderful. I'm so thrilled for you. You don't even know him. But I'm sure I trust you. When can we meet him? The enthusiasm felt forced, a poorly rehearsed script. Maybe soon, Olivia said carefully. Good. That is good. Your father and I would be delighted. And Olivia, you're still taking the vitamins from Dr. Olivia confirmed she was following Dr. Reynolds's instructions, though she couldn't recall why they were prescribed. Her mother brushed off her concerns with talk of a made-up virus, a classic manipulation. The family's control was further asserted when her friend, Megan, showed up unannounced. Megan came bearing peace-offering gifts, her smile tight with a poorly hidden nervousness. She mentioned a call from Olivia's mother about some new man in her life. The mother's strange excitement was a glaring signal that the family was coordinating something behind her back. Nothing has felt normal lately. How have you been feeling? Megan asked, leaning in. Headaches, dizziness, any confusion? Why does everyone keep asking me that? We're just worried. But she wouldn't meet Olivia's eyes. Are you on the vitamins? God, Megan, what is with the vitamins? They're important, Dr. Reynolds insisted. I don't remember ever seeing a Dr. Reynolds. Her friend flinched, a small telling movement. You were very sick. It's normal to have blanks in your memory. Is it? Olivia started to pace, voicing a complete void where this supposed illness should be. Now this man looks at her like he knows her, and everyone she trusts is acting strangely. She felt a constant gnawing sense that a crucial piece of her life was gone. Megan stood too, grabbing her hands. You're spiraling. The sickness probably left you feeling off balance. Just give it time. But her eyes darted away as she spoke. Later, her sister Lauren canceled dinner, blaming a crisis at work. I am so sorry. It is not like me. I know. Things are just complicated right now. Her voice was strained. But I am happy you have met someone. Mom told me about Giovanni. Of course she did. She says he sounds great. She has never met him. Well, I am sure it will be fine when she does. The casual dismissal sent a chill down Olivia's spine. Giovanni planned another dinner 2 nights later, a different restaurant, but the same unnervingly deferential waiters. This time she watched how the other diners reacted to him, with a mix of respect and fear that pointed to a man with immense, intimidating power. Who are you really? She asked over their wine. I own an import business. People do not look at importers like they are afraid of them. His face went perfectly smooth, unreadable. Maybe I am just an intimidating man. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have for you tonight. He captured her hand on the table. Can that be enough? For now. She knew, even then, it was a mistake not to push for the truth, but the desperate look in his eyes silenced every alarm bell in her head, and she could only nod. She confessed to herself an inability to pull away. The force between them was stronger than logic, stronger than fear, stronger than the knowledge that everyone was lying about something important. In the 14 days since they met, Giovanni had woven himself into her life so smoothly she barely noticed the invasion. He was a constant presence. Texts in the morning, flowers for no reason. He seemed to know what she needed before she did, appearing with an umbrella just as an unexpected shower began. This is moving very fast, she observed one night as they walked by the lake. The city lights shimmered on the black water. Is it? He asked, his fingers tangling with hers as if they'd done it 1,000 times. Time is a matter of perception. That is not an answer. Do you want me to slow down? He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. Because I can, if that is what you want. What she really wanted was an explanation for the magnetic pull between them. Instead, she shook her head. No, do not. Relief flooded his expression. He pulled her in, pressing his forehead to hers. Good. I do not think I could have. And then he kissed her, and all her questions vanished. The kiss was a masterpiece of restraint, a deliberate hunger meant to entice, not consume. When he pulled away, the world tilted on its axis. Vittorio then began a tour of curated experiences, starting with a botanical garden where his private access only amplified his aura of power. We moved through humid greenhouses filled with orchids and tropical blooms, the air sticking to my skin. He named the exotic flowers with a strange, effortless expertise. "How do you know all this?" I asked, stroking a red petal. "I notice beautiful things." His eyes never left my face as he said it. Next, he took me to a rooftop restaurant I'd once photographed from afar but could never afford. It was impossibly exclusive, yet the host greeted Vittorio by name, leading us to the best table overlooking the entire city. Chicago glittered beneath us like scattered gems. "This view," I whispered, already composing the shot in my head. "It is more impressive in a storm," Vittorio said, sipping his wine, his attention fixed on me instead of the scenery. "Lightning makes the whole city look alive, dangerous, beautiful." Those exact words sparked a jolt of déjà vu so strong I had to grip the table. I was absolutely certain I had lived this moment before. I had sat in this very seat, watching a storm roll in over Lake Michigan, seeing rain lash against the glass. "Are you all right?" Vittorio's hand instantly covered mine. "Was I here with you before?" A muscle in his jaw tightened. "What makes you think that?" "I do not know," I stammered, the feeling overwhelming me. "Familiar?" he offered, his voice low. "Yes." He studied me for a long moment. "Maybe some places just connect with people in ways we do not understand." But the way he said it suggested he understood perfectly. Back at my apartment, I found more strange things. Expensive camera lenses I never bought were sitting on my shelf. A stack of books about Italian architecture filled a formerly bare shelf. A new designer jacket, tag still on, was in my closet. It was my exact size and style. I called Megan. "Did you leave things at my place?" "What? No, why would I do that?" "There's camera gear here I do not remember buying." Very expensive gear. A long silence stretched on the line. "Maybe you are just forgetting small purchases. That sickness really took a toll." "Megan, a $3,000 lens is not a small purchase." "Are you taking your vitamins?" She dodged, falling back on the usual question. "Dr. Reynolds said not taking them could slow your recovery." I wanted to scream. "Yes, I am taking them." "Good. That is good. Maybe the memories will come back once the supplements kick in." It was a ridiculous theory that didn't explain the jacket with its tags on or the books that never arrived in a box. 3 days later, my mother called during my lunch. "Sweetheart, your father and I were just talking. You should bring Giovanni for dinner this weekend. We are dying to meet him." "You have never been this excited about anyone I have dated." "That is not true. We just love to see you happy." Her voice was painfully bright and fake. "And you sound so happy whenever you talk about him." "I hardly ever talk about him." "You mention him constantly." A beat of silence stretched. "Which is lovely. We just want to get to know him." Is that truly so strange? But it was. Every part of their response felt off-key, a discordant note in a familiar song, yet I agreed. I had to see them together, and I knew a refusal would only confirm a suspicion I couldn't yet name. On Saturday night, Vittorio's car cut through the darkness toward my parents' suburban home. He was clad in dark trousers and a deep burgundy shirt, the collar open to reveal the familiar glint of a gold chain. The casual look likely cost more than my rent for the month. "Anxious?" I asked as highway lights streaked past. "Should I be?" "Most people get nervous meeting parents." "I am not most people," he countered, his eyes flicking to me as his hand left the wheel to rest on my thigh. "And I trust your parents will be gracious." The word choice was a shard of ice, not warm, gracious. as if expecting a staged performance. My mother was a live wire of tension when she opened the door. "Giovanni, it is so wonderful to finally have you here. Please come inside. Robert, they've arrived." My father materialized from the living room, offering a hand that Vittorio accepted with seamless grace. "Mr. Parker, I'm grateful for the invitation to your home." "Call me Robert." My father's gaze on Vittorio was not welcoming. It was an intense clinical evaluation. "Olivia told me you're in import-export and other fields." They fell into a discussion of global markets while I helped my mother in the kitchen, watching the slight tremble in her hands as she arranged appetizers. "Are you all right?" I whispered. "Fine. I just want this evening to be perfect." A brittle smile touched her lips. "He seems very nice. So refined." "Mom, what's going on? You're not acting like yourself." "My behavior is perfectly normal." "I am a mother meeting her daughter's partner," she insisted, her eyes refusing to meet mine. A tense, unreadable undercurrent flowed beneath the surface of the dinner. Vittorio worked his charm on my parents with masterful precision, inquiring about their past while sharing tales of his own supposedly lost family in Italy. The man, Giovanni, deployed a fictional past to build a bridge of sympathy. I registered the unnatural speed of this intimacy as an error in the script. This rapid construction of a family bond, a closed-door meeting between him and my father, felt unmistakably like a transaction being settled. I questioned my mother's instant acceptance of Giovanni. She offered only hollow justifications, her gestures becoming stiff and mechanical. When I pushed harder, she retreated behind the wall of intuition, a well-worn strategy to deflect any real inquiry. "That is not a real answer, Olivia." Her head snapped up, eyes locking with mine. "Sometimes you must believe people are doing what is best, even when you can't see all the pieces." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means Giovanni is good for you, and that is all that matters." Before I could argue, the men reappeared. Giovanni bid my parents farewell, with a warmth that felt entirely genuine, promising another visit soon. The drive back was shrouded in a silence thick with the evening's strangeness. "They liked you," I finally said. "I'm glad," he replied, his hand enveloping mine. "Their approval means a great deal to me." "Why? You've never met them before." "Nor you, me, is that right?" His thumb traced slow patterns on my skin. "Some connections are not bound by time. You always speak in riddles." "I am aware." He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. "Forgive me. Some truths are not simple to put into words." "Try." He cut the engine outside my apartment but did not release my hand. "What if I told you that every moment with you is like a memory of home? That I know what you like because I have studied you? That every gesture you make is filed away in my mind because you are the center of my world?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "That is not possible. We met 2 weeks ago. Is it not possible?" His other hand cupped my jaw. "Or just improbable? Olivia, I am not asking you to understand me, only to trust me." He kissed me then softly. "Can you do that?" My brain screamed for evidence, for facts to counter his poetic evasions. But looking into the raw vulnerability of his gaze, I heard myself surrender. "Okay," I breathed. The kiss that followed was deeper, drowning the questions for a while. The inconsistencies no longer mattered. There was only the solid reality of him. Every instinct, however, warned me of a critical truth being withheld. 3 weeks into our time together, Vittorio summoned me to a dinner with his business partners at a place I'd only ever photographed from the street. We were led to a private room, dimly lit, the air thick with an atmosphere that set my nerves on edge. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" I had asked in the car, adjusting the emerald dress he sent with a note. "For tonight only." It fit, of course, like it was made for me. "I want them to see you." His hand came to rest on my knee, a warm, possessive anchor through the silk. "You are important. They must understand that." Inside, about 15 men, all older than Vittorio, turned as one to watch us enter. Their gaze was uniform, appraising, and predatory. A man with silver hair made his way toward us. "Giovanni." Their embrace was one of a long and deep alliance. "And you must be Olivia," Giovanni announced. "This is Franco Bellini, my oldest friend and most trusted advisor." Franco's handshake was firm, his eyes conducting a swift, intense inventory that made me want to shrink back. "Giovanni talks of nothing else. It is a pleasure." I watched my companion's face. What I saw was not pleasure, but calculation, perhaps even concern. Throughout the meal, his touch was a constant presence, a recurring gesture of control. The conversation was supposedly about business, but it was layered with a coded language I could not begin to understand. An associate asked about my work, and soon after raised a glass. The toast was to our Giovanni, and the possessive word sent a jolt of pure anxiety through my system. It was a claim, an assertion of ownership by this powerful, controlling collective that now seemed to include me. Franco's gaze remained a constant pressure, more of an evaluation than a threat. His stare was broken by a silent, loaded glance he exchanged with my companion, an indecipherable signal that heightened my disorientation just as another associate turned to address me directly. One of the men fumbled his words, asking how I was settling back in, before clumsily changing the subject. The phrase was a cognitive bomb, implying a past that my memory violently rejected. I managed a polite smile, a defense mechanism kicking in to mask the sudden, jarring vertigo. Vittorio's hand tightened on mine, a nonverbal signal of his own distress. I saw a flicker of raw emotion cross his features before his composure was restored. The drive home was utterly silent. I told him to come upstairs, and he hesitated, his eyes scanning my doorway as if assessing a threat. After I confirmed, he stepped inside. He moved through my apartment with a disquieting sense of familiarity, like a man rediscovering a place he knew by heart. He pulled me into an urgent, desperate embrace, demanding that I tell him this was real. Seeking validation for a shared reality I was no longer sure of, I gave him the affirmation he needed, and we fell into each other. My mind processed the intimacy as new, yet my body responded with a shocking sense of deep familiarity. This strange dissonance, a muscle memory that my conscious mind could not explain, hinted at a pre-existing bond. He whispered phrases in a language I did not know, yet the sounds themselves sparked a psychosomatic flicker of recognition. Sleep was impossible afterward. With him breathing softly beside me, I slipped from the bed, an urgent, unresolved suspicion compelling me to search for an answer. Driven by a compulsive need, I violated his privacy and searched his jacket. I found a stack of roughly 12 photographs of us in deeply committed situations wearing wedding rings. The images were a direct contradiction of my own memory, a catalyst that sent my mind into a full-blown crisis. The pictures showed us in places I had never seen. The most powerful one, a professional wedding portrait of us, induced a physical shockwave. The image was a perfect, impossible testament to the profound, terrifying gap in my own history. I also found an invoice for a custom archival frame, 16 by 20 inches with a rush order noted. This small detail suggested a deliberate, recent effort to curate this manufactured history. deepening the chilling sensation that I was being systematically manipulated. A choked sound escaped me as he appeared in the doorway. His eyes felt at the photographs in my hands, and the blood drained from his face in a silent confession. With a voice constricted by shock, I held up the picture of our unremembered marriage. The chasm in her memory echoed in her voice, a litany of distress. He drew near, a study in cautious appeasement, hands held open, but his defense, a fine spun thread between a lie and an omission, snapped under her glare. She flung the photographs away, the gesture of violent dismissal of the life they depicted. Her anguish deepened, questioning the very fabric of her being. His placating touch was met with a sharp, hostile recoil. The world seemed to dissolve around her, and in her overwhelming confusion, he offered a look of pained understanding, professing that his betrayal had a just cause. The word "we" landed like a stone, widening the conspiracy in her mind until it consumed everything. She flinched from his touch as if burned, a rejection that etched a visible wound on his face. Pushed for an answer, he faltered, finally hiding behind the authority of doctors and their twisted idea of protection. His composure finally crumbled, revealing his aim: to help you remember. The confession struck her like a physical blow, her legs giving way beneath her. From the floor, she uttered the clinical diagnosis herself: amnesia. He confirmed it was the aftermath of an accident. He laid out the chilling timeline. An incident 6 weeks ago had erased 2 years. Suddenly, the oddities clicked into a horrifying picture. The medication, her mother's strange kindness, her friend's watchful gaze. It was a conspiracy, and the profound betrayal from her inner circle left her breathless. "You chose to seduce me again, not to tell me," she accused, her voice laced with venom. "He claimed it was the doctor's orders, that recreating their love naturally would be safer." A sound tore from her throat, a laugh both broken and hysterical, for his cure felt exactly like madness. He was a supplicant before her, pleading that every lie was a desperate act to keep from losing her. Her only response was a cold command: "Leave." At the door he turned, his final words a declaration of love, a desperate attempt to salvage some truth from the wreckage of their manufactured life. Alone, she drifted in a fog of disorientation, her own senses now untrustworthy. Relics of a forgotten life with the man now revealed as her husband lay scattered around her. The silence was broken by the ringing of her phone, a call from her friend Megan, piercing the haze. The call felt staged, a cue in a play she hadn't known she was in. She answered with an immediate accusation, and her friend's complicity was confirmed, a betrayal dating back to the hospital. The repeated refrain of medical advice was a meaningless noise she angrily dismissed, fixated on the weeks of calculated deceit. Her friend offered the same fractured logic: protection through lies, forcing a natural bloom of love. She rejected the premise utterly, ending the call to retreat into a self-imposed exile. Her world was a shattered mirror, impossible to reassemble, and his lingering scent was a ghost in the room. After 3 days, adrift in a dissociative haze, she began to investigate her own existence with cold detachment. Her financials were the first clue: strange deposits, unfamiliar transactions, and the final, damning proof: joint accounts bearing the name Giovanni Moretti, weaving their lives together. Her investigation led her to a passport, its pages filled with the ink of Italian entry stamps: Milano, Roma, and Fenzi, all within the last year. Each date was a ghost, a marker in a timeline of her life that existed only for others, solidifying the void in her memory. The digital archaeology of her laptop unearthed a ghost history of deleted files, doctor's appointments, fittings for a dress, spreadsheets for a wedding. This digital trail offered irrefutable proof of the central, terrifying truth. A 2-year chapter of her life had been ripped away. A 20-minute drive later, she stood on the doorstep of another conspirator, Lauren, her arrival unannounced and her demand for answers laced with aggression. She cut through the placating words, insisting on the entire truth now. The passive victim had become the interrogator. Lauren began with a warning that the truth was a tangled thing before speaking of the event 6 weeks prior. She described a car not losing control, but being deliberately forced from the road on a desolate stretch 2 hours from the city. The word accident dissolved, replaced by assault. Her friend's voice fractured as she revealed the attack was a premeditated strike by enemies of Giovanni's enterprise. The vehicle had rolled 3 times, she said, lying undiscovered for nearly an hour. The revelation of such calculated violence landed with the slow, creeping chill of delayed shock. How severe? The answer was a litany of devastation, a profound cranial injury, numerous fractures, and internal bleeding. They airlifted you, inducing a coma to combat the swelling in your brain. Her expression crumbled. We thought we'd lost you. Giovanni kept a 2-week vigil, sleepless, just holding your hand. Yet I awoke. Correct. After 14 days? Upon waking, the last 2 years were simply gone. Your life had rewound. No memory of Giovanni, the wedding, any of it. The neurologist termed it retrograde amnesia, a known consequence of such trauma. And the consensus was to deceive you. It wasn't deception, Lauren insisted, beginning to pace. The doctor warned forcing you to remember would shatter your mind. He advised a gentler path, rebuilding your bond organically, hoping the memories would follow without trauma. So we all agreed to let you find him again, free from the weight of the past. That's pathological. It was a survival plan. Olivia, you were dying, she pleaded. Your husband was breaking apart. We were protecting you. That word, husband, struck with physical force. I don't know him. You did, the you before this. She loved him more than anything. But that isn't me, is it? Lauren stepped closer. You fell for him all over again. In weeks, the same connection sparked. That has to mean something. Before a retort could form, the doorbell chimed. A glance at her phone drained the color from Lauren's face. It's your parents. You called them. They needed to know you figured it out. They entered, their faces masks of composed worry. My mother rushed to me, pulling me into a hug my body refused to accept. My darling, we're so sorry. We debated telling you every day. Then why didn't you? My father sank onto the sofa, seeming to have aged a decade. Because waking you to a 2-year void, a forgotten marriage, and an attempt on your life was worse. How could anyone process all that at once? So instead, you let me believe I was going insane? No, my mother insisted, clutching my hands. We were shielding you, trying to let you heal organically. It was the only way we knew how. I wrenched my hands free. I want the medical files, all of them now. My father produced his phone, and a flood of documents filled my inbox. Admissions forms, brain scans, neurological reports documenting Olivia Parker's severe traumatic brain injury 6 weeks ago. The data was incontrovertible. But data and acceptance are 2 different states of being. I need to see Giovanni, I finally stated. Sweetheart, maybe wait. No, I need to see him now. My mother conceded with a hesitant nod. I'll call him. He arrived in under 15 minutes, having likely waited nearby for the summons. As he entered, the raw agony on his face made my own chest tighten. "Olivia," was all he said. "Can we talk alone?" Lauren's bedroom was the only choice. We stood on opposing sides of the bed, a no man's land between us. "Tell me everything," I commanded. "From the beginning. No lies, nothing left out." Giovanni leaned against the wall as if it alone held him upright. "We met 2 years ago at your art exhibition. He was there on business but saw my photography and was mesmerized. The moment we spoke, I knew my life had changed." "What do you do?" I asked. "The real version. I run an organization. Import-export is the official story. Underneath, we operate in shadows. Some ventures are illegal, others questionable." He held my gaze. "I'm not a good man, Olivia, but I tried to be for you." "So, my husband is a criminal?" "You married a man," he countered, "who loved you enough to grant you a choice." "After 3 months, I told you everything. I expected you to walk away." His voice grew quiet. "But you stayed." "Why?" "You saw past the life I led to the man I wanted to be. You believed I could change, and you loved me fiercely." He pushed himself off the wall. "We were married 6 months ago. A small wedding, just family, close friends. You carried white roses, said they reminded you of the first snow." The details stirred something deep inside. White roses, snow, a memory fragment gone before I could grasp it. "The incident," I said, my voice flat. "My fault. I should have had men with you. I never should have let you take that job. Your passion for that project was a force of nature. Saying no was impossible." His words were steeped in self-loathing. "Our enemies used it. They watched you. They looked for the perfect moment to strike. They forced your car from the pavement. Who? Our rivals. They have been handled." The chilling finality in his tone was absolute. "And you decided a lie was better than the truth." The neurologist's verdict was absolute. "Dr. Reynolds," he warned that forcing the memories could inflict permanent psychic damage. Letting them return naturally amid familiar things was the only humane path. Giovanni crossed his arms. "A human shield." "So, we staged our first encounter, our first dates. We gave you the chance to form a connection without the pressure of the past. But the connection happened anyway. The admission was visibly painful. To a man who is a phantom, I am not a phantom." He stepped closer. "Every single moment was real. The only piece missing was your memory, but the feeling between us, that was genuine. How do I know? How can I see truth when everyone has been acting? Because you feel it." He reached for my hand. I did not pull away. "Your body remembers what your mind has forgotten. The way you respond to me, your laughter, the glance you steal when you think I am not looking. That is not an act. That is proof." I wanted to deny him, to cling to my anger. But with his hand over mine, a warmth spreading through me, the bond was undeniable. Some deep part of me knew him, even as my conscious mind remained a wasteland. "I need time," I whispered. "Take all you need." He released my hand with visible reluctance. "I will wait. For as long as it takes, even if nothing returns, even if you choose another life, I will wait. What if I am not the woman you married? You are her. Memory doesn't define who you are. You are still Olivia, the woman who sees beauty in thunderstorms, who slips between 5 languages when she's stressed, who eats ice cream from the tub after midnight." A sad smile touched his face. "Still the woman I value more than life itself." I left Lauren's apartment on my own. I refused every offer of a ride. I had to walk to process this unbearable new truth of a life I could not access. As I neared home, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. Miss Parker, this is. I stayed on the far edge of the mattress, a world away, though only inches kept us apart. Before dawn, he laid a blanket over me and set water by the bed. It was the body moving on instinct when the mind is lost at sea. We were both learning how to connect without any rules. Dr. Reynolds, your family asked me to reach out. I want to schedule a meeting to discuss your progress. Progress? As if I were a broken specimen. Perhaps I was. Tomorrow. I agreed. I will see you tomorrow. Alone, she stared at photographs of a past she couldn't claim. This vision of a radiant stranger with her face in the arms of an unknown man created a dizzying internal fracture and confirmed the dissociative amnesia. Nothing returned, only the profound, gnawing feeling of having lost something irreplaceable. Dr. Reynolds' office occupied the top floor of a medical tower I didn't remember, yet it felt strangely familiar. Glass walls with a sweeping city view, modern design in tranquil, neutral colors. A receptionist used my name before I could give it. Miss Parker, Dr. Reynolds is expecting you. You can head in. The neurologist was younger than I'd pictured, maybe 45, with kind eyes behind wire-framed glasses. He stood when I entered, offering a hand. Olivia, I am so glad you came. You are the doctor who prescribed the medication. My words were an accusation. Yes. Post-viral immune support was the cover story we gave your family. He motioned to a chair. The real prescription was for neurological compounds to aid your recovery from a traumatic brain injury. I sat, my legs feeling like they might give way. Everyone keeps repeating that phrase, traumatic brain injury, as if saying it clinically could somehow diminish its awful reality. Do you have a term you'd prefer? I would prefer the unfiltered truth, the whole file, no more careful edits or polite medical fictions. He pulled up files, turning his screen to face me. Brain scans filled the monitor. My brain before the crash and after. The images showed damage I couldn't interpret but knew was devastating. 6 weeks ago, your car left the road, resulting in severe head trauma. The impact caused a subdural hematoma, cerebral swelling, and extensive bruising to your frontal and temporal lobes. His finger traced the injured regions on the screen. We placed you in a medically induced coma to relieve the intracranial pressure. You remained unconscious for 14 days. And when I woke up, I had retrograde amnesia spanning approximately 2 years. All earlier memories were fine. All later ones were gone. I stared at the pictures, my brain wounded and alien. That 2-year span is clinically important. This kind of memory loss doesn't follow a set timeline. The trauma hit areas essential for creating and accessing memory. This specific period likely represents your most recent intense block of memory formation. As for your prognosis, Dr. Reynolds paused, choosing his words with immense care. A partial return of memory is more likely than a complete restoration. You may experience flashes, with feelings often resurfacing before facts, but a full recovery cannot be promised. To tell you everything at once would have caused profound psychological harm. Confronting someone with such a deep chasm in their memory, especially about a marriage, can trigger severe depression or worse. Our strategy involved gradual reintroduction, since studies prove that relearning through experience is safer than flooding the brain. You saw deception. The clinician saw therapeutic care. Our only goal was protecting your mind as it healed. This method, which has worked in similar cases, lets emotions redevelop organically, which can even help restore memories. And in the event that it fails, the process still rebuilds an emotional connection to your spouse, giving the relationship a new foundation. The meeting was broken by a sudden entrance. My parents and Giovanni appeared, their arrival clearly orchestrated. My mother looked as though she had been crying. My mother spoke, confirming my demand for the complete medical file. My request was non-negotiable. Every hospital chart, the accident report, and a log of all decisions made while I was incapacitated. My father presented a thick folder confirming it held every diagnosis, consultation, and debate regarding my care. I took the documents, my hands shaking slightly. Giovanni stood framed in the doorway, a calculated space that failed to hide his inner conflict. I looked directly at him and demanded a full account of what happened. He drew closer, respecting an unspoken boundary, and began his story of my drive home from a job 2 hours outside Chicago. He described a meeting with Franco about a growing turf war. The other side was Russian, trying to seize his shipping lanes. He refused to yield, so they retaliated by targeting his wife. A muscle clenched hard in his jaw. The enemy had watched me for weeks, mapping my schedule and finding my vulnerabilities. The assault was tactical, a vehicle intercept that trapped my car before a high-speed side impact. My car smashed through a guardrail, plunged down a ravine, and rolled 3 times. His eye twitched, an involuntary echo of the event. They didn't find me for 47 minutes. I was bleeding internally. My mother gasped, and my father steadied her. I was airlifted to Northwestern Memorial for emergency surgery on the hematoma, then moved to intensive care. Giovanni's hands were clenched into tight, aggressive fists. He explained he arrived during the surgery and stayed by my side for the 2 weeks I was unconscious. The attackers, he said, were no longer a concern, a statement that left no doubt as to their fate. Dr. Reynolds then described my state after the coma as confused, noting the first person I asked for was my sister. When my family came, the 2-year gap was painfully clear as I spoke of old events as if they were new. I had no memory of Giovanni and became distressed when faced with the lost time. Cognitive tests later confirmed it. A targeted retrograde amnesia that had specifically erased every memory of my life with him. Her memory was a total blank. She had to ask what words she had used against him. A tremor entered Giovanni's voice as he recalled her calling him a stranger. Panic seized her at his claim of marriage, her fear curdling into accusations. The wound of that moment was etched across his face. He explained this is when they sought help. Forcing her memory, the specialists agreed, risked shattering her psyche. She labeled their strategy an elaborate deception. Her mother called it recreating her life, explaining how they had rebuilt her world, restoring her apartment and her job. She felt they had constructed a second courtship for her. "We only opened a door," Giovanni countered softly. "You were the one who felt something." Dr. Reynolds then laid out all the medical files for her, urging an outside opinion to prove their process was sound. He stood by their protocol, his faith in it absolute. She asked to see the house she supposedly shared with Giovanni. He gently corrected her bitter tone, stating it was, without question, their home. The 30-minute drive was a silent journey from the city's heart to a world of secluded manors. Automated gates swept open to reveal the residence. It was a structure of stone and glass set in flawlessly manicured grounds. The interior was a shock, a place she had never seen, yet every detail was a reflection of her own taste. Photographs of their shared life were everywhere. The images showed a history she had no key to unlock. He led her to an office of her own design, filled with proof of a thriving career. But the master bedroom was the breaking point, a space saturated with the evidence of their shared lives and intimacy. Every detail in the house screamed of a life lived together. He then presented a leather-bound journal, explaining it was her own account of their love. A random entry from 8 months ago in her own script described a Napa weekend filled with tender moments. The passage recounted a moment she defined her love for him, a feeling born of being seen and accepted without condition. Tears blurred the ink as she confronted the emotional certainty of her past self, a conviction that now felt alien to her. She whispered that she did not know that person. Giovanni's voice broke as he apologized, blaming his dangerous world for failing to protect her. She studied him, the man she was falling for again, now revealed as her husband, the architect of this grand deception. She confessed she could never be the woman in the journal. He freed her from that burden instantly. When she feared the memories were gone for good, he proposed they could build a new life from scratch. He promised to wait forever, the devoted partner. When she insisted it wasn't fair, he called his devotion the only good thing he had ever done. She shut the book, seeing the house not as a home, but a museum to a woman she'd lost. She asked for time alone to think. He agreed, leaving the entire estate to her. She asked where he would go. He vaguely mentioned other properties. He said he was leaving so she could make her own choice, uninfluenced by his presence. Alone, she walked the curated halls, touching things, seeking a spark of memory but found nothing. In the bathroom, she found the supplements prescribed to keep her docile, disguised as recovery aids. She flushed them, a final rejection of the lie. A call from her sister, Megan, came, and she poured out her profound confusion. Her sister admitted the ethics were wrong and apologized. She understood they meant to protect her, but the betrayal still burned. Asked about Giovanni, she admitted her feelings were real. Her body was drawn to him, a physical knowing that her mind could not explain. This paradox was the core of her turmoil. Her sister urged her to trust that feeling. The focus turned from the past to the present moment. Lying in their bed, she buried her face in his pillow, inhaling his scent, desperately trying to summon a single memory of their love or their wedding. The effort produced nothing but an echoing sense of loss for a life she couldn't touch. But beneath it, a deeper feeling stirred. Not a memory, but a primal rightness, a subconscious recognition of their bond. It was the only anchor she had. The next week passed in therapy and isolation. She studied her own journal like a cold case file and failed at every attempt to trigger a memory. On the 5th day, her sister arrived, shattered by guilt, repeating how sorry she was for her part in the entire deception. She confessed to crying herself to sleep, tormented by the confusion they had built for her. The full story came out over dinner, starting with Giovanni's frantic, grief-stricken call for help from the hospital. The family and Dr. Reynolds had agreed a slow, careful re-entry was the only safe path. Her sister confessed to rehearsing the lies to sound convincing, insisting their goal was always her protection, not manipulation. Their aim, she swore, was to keep her from a complete psychological break. She understood the reason, but knowing and forgiving were two different things. Sorrow replaced anger. When asked about Giovanni, she confessed her body still felt tied to him, despite the blankness in her mind. Then Lauren visited. Lauren brought photo albums never seen before, a visual history of her life and her love with Giovanni. The pictures laid out the careful, deliberate growth of their bond. Lauren confirmed she had watched her choose Giovanni, knowing full well the world he came from. She had been fearless then, absolutely certain in her love. Lauren pointed out that the same pattern was now happening all over again. When she voiced her fear of never remembering, Lauren reframed it as a rare gift, the chance to consciously choose him twice. The idea was a balm to her soul. Giovanni respected her need for space. His contact limited to brief texts that were a quiet promise of his patience. On day 8, she called him, asking for the whole truth. He arrived in under 20 minutes, as if he had been waiting for her signal. They started at a quiet restaurant. He ordered for them both without asking, an echo of a life they'd shared, and she allowed it. Over dinner, he wove the tapestry of their past, beginning at a gallery 2 years ago. He described a moment his entire world shifted, and he approached a stranger who met his gaze with curiosity. Their first talk lasted 4 hours, a fire fueled by instant connection. She asked when he revealed the dark side of his life. He told her it was 3 months in, at a secure place where he laid out the evidence, fully expecting her to walk away. He then reached for her hand. He said she had stayed, seeing the man he could become instead of the man he had been. From there, they drove to the church where they were married. Giovanni painted the scene, the flowers in her hair, her vows that made him weep, and her promise to stand by him, no matter the storm. He confirmed she had kept that promise even after someone tried to take her life. Standing there, she felt a ghost of an emotion, a physical echo her body had kept. She called it something that wasn't a memory. The admission lit a flame of hope in his eyes. He relayed the doctor's theory: the heart remembers long before the mind does. She dismissed the clinical words, asking him simply to be present with her. In the quiet of the church, she finally stopped trying to think and instead began to feel. The next stop was a rooftop bar they had visited since her amnesia. Giovanni led her to a precise spot, invoking a memory of a thunderstorm from the year before. He described her taking pictures of the lightning, calling it a war between the city and the heavens. He stood close behind her, his voice low as he recounted her first, "I love you," spoken at that exact spot as the storm broke. The words triggered a psychic shockwave, a violent blast of déjà vu. For 1 perfect second she was there. She felt the rain, heard the sky tear open, and knew that absolute certainty of her love. The memory shattered and was gone before she could grasp it. She cried out in frustration, but Giovanni called the fleeting image a breakthrough. He vowed to continue the process, which they did for days, visiting one meaningful location after another. They visited the botanical garden where he proposed and the Michigan beach of their honeymoon. Each place sparked emotional echoes, flashes of feeling without context. Dr. Reynolds later confirmed this was the path, explaining that emotion was always the first thread of memory to be found. The doctor spoke of a fractured hippocampus, though the amygdala remained whole. Why feelings arrived before facts. A full recovery of her past was uncertain, he stressed, but her emotional truth was undeniable. In that clinical void, one decision formed. She would go home. It was a choice from the gut, a conviction she could not put into words. Giovanni had been living elsewhere, giving her room to breathe. The raw relief that flooded his voice over the phone confirmed everything. He offered more time, but she insisted he return to what she now called our house. She spoke the words with a sense of ownership. When her parents visited, her mother wept at the sight of them moving together in the kitchen, a muscle memory that amnesia couldn't touch. Her father confirmed how deeply happy she had been, adding he was seeing it happen all over again. He saw this second, choosing not as chance, but as destiny reasserting itself. With Megan, she began the slow work of rebuilding trust. This meant watching video files, fragments of a life she didn't know, with Giovanni at parties, on beaches, woven into the fabric of every day. The woman on the screen laughed often and was always touching him, her eyes holding a look of profound reliance. She was witnessing her own forgotten happiness. Megan had called it a feeling of being complete. When asked if it could return, Megan replied it was already taking root again. 3 weeks later, they made breakfast. Amidst the familiar routine, she mentioned her love for the rain, a detail he confirmed had always been part of her. In that quiet domestic moment, a realization broke through. The memories were gone, but the emotional architecture remained. She spoke Giovanni's name. He turned from the stove. She said she loved him, the words feeling utterly true on her tongue. She explained that she couldn't remember the first time, but was feeling it now, which was more precious. He moved abruptly, a spatula clattering to the floor as he came to her, his hands trembling as he asked her to say it again. She did, stressing this was a choice made now, not an echo of a past feeling. The kiss that followed was both a homecoming and a new beginning. They would build a new history from scratch, weaving in the ghosts of memory as they appeared. She believed this path was better than a simple cure, that a second conscious choice held a deeper power. As rain streaked the windows, they began constructing their future from a past she no longer needed to access. The reality she had now was more than enough. 3 months had passed since the disclosure, a season of rebuilding her entire world. Sessions with Dr. Reynolds were for navigating a life filled with memory gaps and losses she could not grieve. Tiny shards of her past had started to emerge. The scent of cedar would sometimes conjure the ghost of Giovanni's cologne. A piece of music might stir the memory of dancing in her limbs, but with no scene attached. They were emotional echoes, not memories. Dr. Reynolds spoke of the brain's power to compensate. He described how it forges new neural routes to sustain emotional bonds. She saw it as building on a foundation she couldn't see, an idea Dr. Reynolds affirmed was still strong. She picked up her camera again, her photography now a conscious act of documentation. Her art became a deliberate archive of their new life, a bulwark against any future forgetting. Giovanni was often her focus, captured in quiet domestic moments. He remarked once that he had become her subject. She replied that he was her favorite. Talk of the future, which she sensed were repetitions of past dialogues, now felt entirely new. They discussed children and trips to places she couldn't remember. The house was finally becoming a home. Meanwhile, Giovanni's organization needed records for its legitimate front. The subject's dormant professional talents began to surface, unknowingly aiding the very man who had undone her. The critical psychological turn happened exactly 3 months after a woman named Lauren revealed his deception. Sparked by a shift in the weather the subject had subconsciously longed for. On a veranda with a storm gathering, the perpetrator used the turbulent air to draw her closer. She confessed a deep love for this weather, and he replied, "I know," cementing the fiction that he was the sole keeper of her identity. When she pressed him, the perpetrator admitted to 2 years of obsessive surveillance, twisting his pathological stalking into a story of romantic devotion. He painted his recent gaslighting as a second courtship, a narcissistic reframing of his cruel and systematic manipulation. She showed all the signs of a traumatic bond, reaching for him, speaking words of love. She rationalized her surrender as a conscious, powerful choice, a necessary defense to legitimize the emotions she felt for her manipulator. The perpetrator demanded verbal proof of his victory, which she gave, accepting the world he had built for her. An act of intimacy, timed to the breaking storm, sealed their psychological contract. His suggestion to go inside was a small test of her obedience. She resisted, wanting to burn the moment into her mind. In the storm's fury, she memorized the details of his face and the look in his eyes, trying to forge a new, true memory from an event that was the bedrock of a lie. In a moment of perceived safety, the perpetrator raised the subject of having a child. The subject confirmed this was a shared dream from a past she couldn't recall, tethering her to him once more. She agreed to this future, cementing the reconstructed bond between them. The subject's relief at her consent revealed how much he valued her reproductive compliance. Their therapy sessions continued, ironically helping to solidify the new, false timeline and enabling a selective recovery of memory fragments. Pieces of their wedding and travels began to resurface, signs of a slow and fractured neurological healing. Her professional life began to thrive, her art now a conscious expression of this carefully reintegrated identity. Giovanni offered unwavering encouragement for her career. 6 months after the night of the storm, they decided to try for a child, an act aimed at creating a future rather than rebuilding a past. 3 months later, a positive test marked the beginning of their next chapter. The subject whispered the reality of her pregnancy, her voice a mix of absolute joy and primal fear. The perpetrator calmly defined her conflicted feelings as a perfectly normal human reaction. This happened exactly 12 months after the revelation that had both destroyed and remade her. In her studio, the subject paged through a photo album, a chronological record of her life with the perpetrator. Some faces sparked a flicker of recognition, others were just strangers in her story. Giovanni entered, asking how she was as she pointed toward her growing belly. They had learned the week before it was a girl. Her emotional reaction felt genuine, yet unattached to any memory of wanting a daughter. He pointed her to a photograph, testing her, asking if she remembered that specific happy moment. She confessed she had no memory of the day, but could see the joy on her own face. He gently corrected her, changing her words from past to present tense, reinforcing a narrative of unbroken happiness. The subject has come to accept that parts of her history may be lost forever. The subject closed the album, asking Giovanni to tell her how they first met. He paused, asking which time she meant, the real one, or the one he had staged. She asked for both stories, giving him permission to narrate both the truth and the lie. He wove tales of the life she had lived but could never truly reclaim, casting himself as the anchor of her past and her present. Outside, the rain began to fall, a recurring fateful trigger that mirrored the storm inside her own mind. Watching the rain, the subject considered all the women she had been. She thanked him for his methods, reframing his profound deception as a gift that had allowed her to fall in love all over again, thus validating his manipulation. The subject held up her repeated choice of him as something precious and rare, cementing her rationalization of the entire trauma. He laid his hand over hers on her stomach, a silent gesture of ownership. He thanked her for her obedience. His gratitude, he said, was for choosing him twice, for loving him without a map. The subject dismissed the need for memory, claiming instead a deep, instinctual recognition of his soul. His psychological campaign had reached its final, successful conclusion. As the rain fell, they made plans for a future built on a foundation of lies and broken memories. In 6 months, their daughter would be born into a world defined by her father's control and her mother's captive devotion. Though entire chapters of their courtship may be gone for good, the subject now dedicates herself to building conscious, present moments. This deliberate shift is a survival tactic, prioritizing her constructed reality over an inaccessible past. The father figure was openly emotional on video calls, his tears reflecting his investment in the fabricated narrative. The support system, including both Megan and Lauren, continued to offer gentle, structured reinforcement of the subject's new, carefully managed reality.